patreon.info. You can go to these websites and follow us.
What I would
Put an icon
do
there through
just
Facebook
some
and
information
Twitter.
about legal aid
Please
generally,
use those social
the types
media
of cases
to
we
convey what
have,
you've learned
funding
here, to
streams
to
that we
share
have
and
and that we
partner
don't have,
with as many people as
the
possible.
reductions that
I want
we
to thank
experienced, the
truthout.org,
benefits
a
to the
remarkable
community.
independent source of news and
That's
analysis,
just a quick
and I ask you to
outline.
check out their website. And I want to ask you again,
What
please,
do people need?
patronize and support the radio stations that bring you this program. Do the same for us.
Sometimes they
if you
just need
can.
advice to
And
do that.
for sure,
Sometimes they just need.
please come back and join me next week for the next edition of Economic Update. Goodbye from Richard Wolf until then.
Oh, I see, this is a good graph.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're color partner. It was much nicer. Maybe I can email it to you. You too. Santana.
Hi, I'm Brett Michaels for the American Diabetes Association. Diabetes is a constant battle.
Sometimes he
Testing,
also
treating,
uses
fighting
John
to
Lee
live
Hooker.
a
Oh,
life.
yeah.
I know. I've had diabetes since I was 6 years old.
All connected.
A lot of people don't think it's deadly, but diabetes kills more Americans each year than breast cancer and AIDS combined. It's been called a silent epidemic, and without your help, it will keep getting worse.
Traditional.
Please
Oh,
join me in
okay.
a movement to stop diabetes. Share your passion and your story. Get involved in local events like the Tour to Cure or the Step Out Walk. Learn how you can better manage this disease or reduce your odds of developing it. And give what you can to help us spread the word and fund programs like the diabetes camps for kids and research to find a cure. Join the movement at stopdiabetes.com. Help us fight a deadly disease that shortens and burdens the lives of millions of Americans. Together, we can stop diabetes.
I hope so. I'm one of them.
Stand by. Three, two, one.
Good morning, this is Bev Douglas for the Daily FYI here at KBBG FM 88.1 Waterloo. My guest this morning is Vivian P. Meyer Betts. Good morning, Vivian.
Good morning. How are you?
Great. And she is the managing attorney for Iowa Legal Aid here in Waterloo. How'd you get into law?
Well, my father was very interested in social activity. He was a union organizer. He was, a member of ACLU. I mean, he's always been involved in things. We all came from New York City, so he was very involved. And then ultimately, he wanted me to be a tribune of the people. That's what he called it.
Tribune of the people. Okay.
And, I couldn't think of a better way to do that than to become an attorney. And of course, when I became an attorney, that whole period of time was filled with rebellion and protests and so on. So
Okay.
it seemed like logical.
Okay, I'm thinking of the famous attorney from New York, very tall. Oh, wow, he was a trailblazer. I'll think of it later on. How did you get to Iowa?
That's an interesting story. When I was a kid, it was kind of a tumbleweed. We moved from New York City to New Jersey to Oklahoma to Washington State and then back to Minnesota, and that's kind of where I wrote most. And then I went to school in Madison, Wisconsin, and then came to Iowa because it was the only program at the time that offered clinical activity while you were going to law school. So I thought it was a great opportunity. They had a great, writing program, and I never regretted that. It's a good place to go to school.
Great.
And then I chose to stay here because I really like the people.
Just fell in love with it.
Yeah, everybody waved.
Yeah,
What's not
who does that? Here in Iowa.
You betcha.
So Vivian, the Iowa Legal Aid organization, do you think that sometimes people get that confused with what the public defender does?
All the time, yeah.
Okay.
And actually, a lot of times people think we're a state organization. In fact, we're a nonprofit. And a lot of times people just assume because folks on the criminal side are entitled to court-appointed counsel in many cases, they assume that people on the civil side are also entitled, and that's simply not true. So a lot of folks that don't have the money to hire an attorney have a real problem accessing the the justice system and pursuing the cases that they need to either defend against or to pursue on their own initiative. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of confusion about that. Attorneys, sometimes judges, they don't realize kind of what we are exactly. So we try to make a point of helping people understand the difference.
So there's a lot of pro bono activity from attorneys, it would seem like.
Oh, yeah, I mean, we have a lot of volunteers, and one of the good things about the volunteering, besides obviously helping the client directly, is kind of helping them understand what our clients are facing, the kind of barriers that they deal with. And also to teach them that, we're a nonprofit, we're not a government agency, and we are not the public defender, and that we need the support of the community to be able to do our work.
There are so many different areas that you're able to provide services for. I'm looking at this pie chart, and quite frankly, the numbers are a little too small for me, but just want to read some of the ways that you're able to assist people seeking help, protecting victims of domestic violence. Okay, before we went on the air, I was saying that through Abraham Funches at Waterloo Commission for Human Rights, I know he was talking about how many times in domestic violence where mother and children are at risk of being evicted, even though they were the ones who were victimized.
That's right. And there are now more protections than there have been in the past. The Violence Against Women Act can protect people who are on Section 8 and other subsidized housing, recognizing that they're victims. But yes, if a member of the family who is on the Section 8 program, they have drug-related problems in criminal court, if they have a felony conviction, if there are problems with a landlord and a person gets evicted, they can lose their program benefits. And that's devastating for
And so all of these are kind of scenarios unique to Section 8
Right.
dwellers.
And actually other programs as well that are federally funded, because they tend to have similar barriers because of the nature of those crimes, basically,
Okay.
or evictions.
And because public funding is involved.
Oh, yeah.
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 Okay. One that really stands out for me is the juvenile, how is it said? The kid is having problems. Okay, say you're expelled from school and you think it's an unjust expulsion. Do you go to legal aid?
You certainly can. It's a civil proceeding.
Okay.
And there are generally policies and rules that govern the process that's involved. And particularly where a child is disabled, there are different standards for children with disabilities. They have to take into account the nature of the disability and how that may affect that child's ability to control their behavior. And a lot of times that doesn't happen. And so, we try to let people know that we can help them with their individualized education plan, the IEP, and advocate for them if they have disabled children to get the services that they need. So, there are a lot of things that we can do in the education context to work with families. And even if their child is not disabled, certainly we can help with suspensions and expulsions. We need to have as much time in advance as possible because those proceedings often move quickly. But, if people know that they can call us, then hopefully we can help them more effectively the earlier they call.
Wow.
But yeah, there's a lot of issues out there.
Okay, and since you did bring up like disabilities, in general, are you able to help speed up the process of receiving assistance with people that are disabled and looking for some type of assistance?
Sometimes. It's a lot of times people spin their wheels, for example, when they're applying for SSI, and they don't realize that if they just don't make an appeal, then it changes the onset date of their disability. It can affect what they received or should receive retroactively. So it's real important for people to do their appeals, and we can help with those appeals. We can certainly give advice, and they need to have documentation going to the doctor and getting medical services. And I realize that's a barrier because a lot of people can't afford to go to the doctor. But it's essential that they have that medical record, because if they don't, then we don't have any evidence to fight with, so to speak. And understanding what the nature of their disabilities are and how those are viewed by the Social Security Administration. So yeah, I mean, we can confer with people, we can help them gather their documentation. We understand, you know, the procedure and process that the agency requires. And particularly, for example, if somebody's terminal, they may, like they have cancer or some disease that's terminal, they may actually be able to speed up getting their benefits. Now, frequently, Social Security will do that on their own accord if they have the documentation that they need. But if not, then that may be a place where we can move things along. The process has been very long for a long time, and it has actually gotten a little bit better because they've involved more hearing officers and ALJs to make decisions. So, but we can certainly help with that process, you bet. And private attorneys can also help with those kinds of issues.
Okay.
And we have a list of private attorneys who do that work, so hopefully we can get it to all the people who need it.
Well, it sounds like anyone that's seeking aid or advice, it will be very, you know, helpful if there is good record keeping on their part. Yeah. Okay.
And you may know, I mean, Hattie Holmes has, you know, Dolores Holmes has worked at Legal Aid for 40 years, and she is very, very good at what she does, and is able to move things more effectively than a lot of people who don't have that experience.
Oh, great. So. Great. Okay. Veterans issues.
A lot of new funding out there, and a lot of recognition that things like PTSD can really affect the person's capacity to be able to take care of themselves and to get the medical help they need, and having to deal with some of the delays and barriers through the Veterans Administration, hospitals and whatnot. So yes, we try to work with people. We get referrals from community action agencies who receive funding, and they refer the clients to us because we can do a legal assessment of their situation and may be able to help them with multiple things like getting public benefits, helping them understand how they can get housing, working with them to get medical access to the medical care system and so on.
Yeah, I see on the 23rd of this month, there's going to be an event called Veterans and Employers.
Yes.
So we definitely need to take care and support those, you know, veterans who have just literally put their lives on the line, you know, for our protection.
Well, and I don't know if you're aware, but it's actually veterans from the Vietnam War who have lit a fire, so to speak, into disability rights, because they obviously experienced a lot of difficulties when they returned and didn't get the help that they needed sometimes.
Exactly.
So, you know, it's a whole new ballgame because of some of the laws that have been passed. Senator Harkin helped to pass the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. So yeah, there are a lot more tools to work with now to help folks with disabilities. 40
years later.
Yeah, yeah, better late than never.
Better late than never, exactly. Another area is, well, the health.
Healthcare. For example, a lot of times people don't realize that your medical insurance does not cover your care in a nursing home. That is to say, Title 19. So people have to, well, I should say medical insurance like Title 19, but there are Title 19 programs for persons who are disabled and who are seniors that can pay for getting them the care that they need. But there are a lot of procedures for applying for that benefit, and people often don't understand how things they did maybe within the last 10 years to protect their ownership of property and inheritance and so on can impact them to the extent that they can be denied those benefits. So it's a complex area of the law, and there are some private attorneys who are very good with this, but many of them aren't that familiar with the program. So it's a place where we can help people to qualify for Title 19 coverage in nursing homes, or to get into assisted living programs or whatever kind of waiver program that they may need if they have a brain injury, if they have problems with their medical condition, it's a severe condition, they need a lot of help. Those programs are available and we can help them to access that.
And sometimes are there like conflicts as to whether individuals that need to need to be in a home, it's like, well, I have to use my own personal money as opposed to, I guess, what you're saying, Title 19 is what it's called?
Yes, and there are new, relatively new protections for people who are married, because the whole notion was before that people had to be impoverished, their spouse ended up being impoverished to be able to get them into a nursing home. And now, if they are a community spouse, that is to say, the person not in the nursing home, there are ways to protect some of the assets of the relationship to allow them to continue to live in the community with some degree of comfort, and then still get the care that their spouse needs. So, I was going to mention to you too, there's one thing in particular with seniors that's important to know. The legislature just passed a law that allows seniors who are being exploited financially or who are being abused or neglected to get a protective order. And that speeds up the process of getting a remedy to help them to avoid being neglected, to get the help they need, or to prevent people from exploiting them financially.
Does this fall under the 60-plus elder law category?
Yes, and yeah, and as I say, if they are really dealing with a difficult problem, I mean, sometimes we have grown children who are exploiting their parents. And, so, I mean, there needs to be a remedy, and they've finally created one, and it's something we can help with.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Okay, then there is also consumer and small claims court.
Yes. We help with evictions to prevent people from losing their housing. We can also help them when they have a money judgment filed against them, or I should say a small claim filed against them to recover money versus possession of property. So sometimes, if a landlord, for example, says, I want $5,000 because they want to make sure that they're under the statutory limit for the small claims court, because they don't have to have an attorney. But if somebody doesn't show up, they have a judgment for $5,000, when in fact, if they had shown up, the landlord may not have been able to establish with evidence that they really are entitled to $5,000. Now, hopefully judges help to try to ensure that what they're asking for is documented and that there's evidence to support it. But I've seen situations where people end up with a $5,000 judgment when in fact the actual costs were much less. So it's real important. And sometimes people get served with an eviction and they get served with a money judgment type of proceeding. And they don't realize, because the forms look so much alike, they're standardized forms, they look so much alike. Well, of course, people's attention's on the eviction. They forget to file an answer in their money judgment case, and they end up getting a default judgment, didn't even realize that they had a small claim pending. So yeah, there's a lot of education that we try to do to make sure people are aware of these things.
It's a lot of great information, Vivian. We're going to take a short break.
Iowans who have nowhere else to turn to keep their families safe or stay in their homes. Others translate outreach materials, answer reception calls, or help with office tasks. They all have one thing in common: the commitment to help low-income Iowans gain access to justice. And that makes Iowa Legal Aid's volunteers inspirational. In 2014, 60 community volunteers contributed close to 6,000 hours as receptionists, intake screeners, paralegals, interpreters, office assistants, and translators. The same year, more than 800 attorneys volunteering with the Iowa Legal Aid and the Polk County Bar Association Volunteer Lawyers Projects donated over 15,000 hours, assisting those who cannot afford an attorney to get custody of their children, resolve disputes with their landlords, or establish powers of attorney. In honor of the National Volunteer Week, we salute those who help bring hope, dignity,
Stand by.
to our most vulnerable citizens. Thank
3, 2,
Thank you
1.
for that.
So this is Bev Douglas back with Vivian Betts from the Iowa Legal Aid. And you just heard a very, incredible public service announcement talking about the ways that volunteers have helped at the Iowa Legal Aid. That's very impressive.
Thank you. And it is. I mean, we have a lot of wonderful attorneys who are willing to help people. They feel it is their ethical obligation, but they feel strongly that people need to have fairness and justice to be able to, go through their lives and be reasonably successful with their lives. So they're willing to spend their time and their energy and their knowledge and experience, and it's really very nice that people are willing to do that. And it's all across the state. We have 10 offices, and all of them have volunteers who come into the office, people who we can refer cases to. It's really a pretty amazing expenditure of time. And that doesn't even count the times that attorneys are on boards of directors or, on their church committees and things like that to try to help give back and to be part of the community. So I appreciate giving the recognition to folks who are donating their time.
Absolutely. Let's talk about custodial issues. Are they difficult?
Oh, yeah, always. Well, not all. 95% of the time, let me put it that way. Sometimes we're able to get, people to a place where they're both comfortable with the agreement that we've negotiated, and that works out well. At this point, roughly a third of what we do involves housing. We talked about evictions, foreclosure defense, forfeiture of contracts defense, and things like that. But the other third of what we do is pretty much family law. Because we have so many people who need help with family law, and we have limited resources, we accept cases only where there's domestic violence or child abuse and neglect. And believe me, we are up to our eyebrows in people who need help with those things. We also, of course, help them with protective orders to protect them and their children where there's domestic violence that's acute, where they really need something now. They can file on their own. They should not be charged any court costs. And we can assist them because it's pretty scary to go into court and face a batterer. And our hope is that we can help them understand what the legal standard is so that they can make their case successfully. So, and help them through a kind of scary time. We work very frequently with Cedar Valley Friends of the Family up in Waverly and with Waypoint, with housing issues, with getting shelter, and particularly with having advocates come with them to court. Because if they don't have family to support them, to show up alone and with an attorney,
Makes a difference, night and day.
no question. And so
Same thing with hospitals.
Oh, yeah. You need to collaborate with people. And there are a lot of great service providers in Blackhawk County who help victims of domestic violence to get what they need to be able to leave and to be able to stay away. Often becoming financially dependent on the batterer makes it much more difficult for people to be able to leave. And they're fighting a battle on many fronts. For example, the batterer may come to their place of employment and they could get fired because of the brouhaha that the batterer raises at work or calls endlessly all day long, threatens the supervisor. They can lose their job because the batterer will give them the keys to the car to go to work. They can make false reports to the Department of Human Services, just any number of things that people have to fight when they're most vulnerable. So that's why we need help as a community, not just legal aid, but all the people we work with and churches, family members. It's essential to stop this violence,
So
and especially for children. Yeah.
housing, child abuse, wow, very high incidence in.
Oh, yeah. Iowa, I should say Blackhawk County, at one time, I'm not sure if it's still true, but at one time they had the highest incidence of recidivist child abuse in the state. And so, children kind of going through the revolving door of foster care back to the home, disrupting their education, disrupting their, peace of mind.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of issues here about not only the immediate problem, but the long-term consequences of not addressing those problems. So, important.
How many years have you been with legal aid?
This is my 22nd year.
22nd year.
And I was in private practice 15 years before that, so about 36 years.
Okay. What do you see, Vivian, as where we should concentrate our efforts as a community to help people? I mean, it's like a fantastic, service that legal aid is doing, but what do you think is lacking?
The hardest job we seem to have is getting the word out to people when they need it. We do all kinds of activities, like I'm doing today, to do outreach, to let people know that we're here and what we do and how we can help. We also talk to service providers to help them understand how we can help their clients. And it seems like there are still so many people who say, oh my gosh, I didn't even know you existed. Well, part of the problem is, of course, people hear it and it goes out the other side because it's not their problem immediately.
Mm-hmm.
But when you come into a crisis situation like that, you need to move fast and you need to move effectively. And so the best thing we can do is to educate people about what we do and what the possibilities are that we can help people with. We have a lot of outreach materials, we have booklets, and if a person's client eligible, they can receive them free. We send them the booklets, they can come into the office. There's a list of the booklets that are available. Our website, for example, is a good place to go to get legal information about all kinds of issues. And it's written for lay people. There's a part of that website that's aimed at lawyers to help them help clients that they may not be as familiar with the legal issues because they don't practice in that area a lot. So we try to help both the attorneys and the pro bono, or I should say pro se people who need help. By the way, just to let people know, they can now access our intake system two ways. They can call, and that would be from 9 in the morning to 11 in the morning, and then from 1:30 in the afternoon to 3:30 in the afternoon every day of the week, except Thursday afternoons, because that's when statewide, we try to staff cases, because we do that every week. But they can basically access by calling a centralized number in Des Moines, because they have lots of phones and phone lines. And then they will have a screening for financial eligibility, income and assets. We use the federal poverty guidelines. If they are eligible, and many people are, we then send them to talk to an attorney immediately, an intake attorney, who can try to give them immediate advice. And
What is how long usually does it take to actually be assigned a case?
Waiting on the phone sometimes takes 15 or 20 minutes.
Okay.
And that can be difficult if you're at work. So there is another alternative, and that's to go online on our website, iowalegalAid.org.
Okay.
And you can type your situation and email it essentially to the program. And then someone will call back at a time that you say is a good time to be called to do the financial screening, which takes 5 or 10 minutes. And then the attorney talks to them immediately and gives them immediate advice and gets the facts. And then if they need a higher level of service than just advice or a document drafted or whatever, they send it to our regional office so that we're close to where they are. And then we can help them with representation in court.
And is this the preference by way of telephone, or what about walk-in?
Certainly, yes, people can always walk in.
Okay.
And, we take an intake pretty much any time when they walk in, because we realize people don't have transportation and time.
Very good. We need to make another, PSA to give this type of information, an ongoing public service announcement to talk about the services that can be, we're talking about Iowa Legal Aid. The guest this morning has been Attorney Vivian P. Myers-Betts. Thank you so much. A lot of information that I think people found very useful.
Thank you, Beverly. And we really appreciate the opportunity to let folks know how we can help them. We really enjoy our work, so come on in.
We're glad that you're there. Bev Douglas signing off for the Daily FYI here at KBBG FM 88.1 Waterloo. That's it.
That was great. Thank you. Well, and if there are areas of the law that you